The Origin of the Oracle, a story about arrival, survival, and becoming. I was born remembering a place I couldn't name. On paper, it declared Canberra, Australia, but my cells have always whispered something else. Deep inky blues, a soft gradient from midnight to icy white, like a quiet nebula between worlds. My parents still remind me of my arrival story every so often, usually with a laugh and a knowing look, like, of course, this all tracks. They joke that it's no surprise I grew up into someone with a strong personality, someone who's always done things her own way, regardless of what the outside world suggests I should be doing. Apparently, I came in with preloaded opinions. They speak of my arrival date Earthside the way you would recount a cosmic event, less like a birth story and more like a earth-shattering moment. Mum was anxious, afraid, hoping everything would turn out okay. She had every reason to be on edge. I arrived not long after her firstborn, a baby who came into their lives but didn't remain earthside for long due to birthing complications. As you can imagine, that loss devastated both my parents in ways that words still struggle to hold. There was love, terror, grief, hope, and a whole lot riding on that moment. So when I made my entrance, it was strong, powerful, which might explain why I arrived. I didn't waste a single second declaring myself safe, present, and accounted for. They tell me that the minute the doctor pulled me out, I roared, not a polite newborn cry, a full-bodied announcement. And then, just to really drive the point home, I somehow grabbed the doctor's gold chain necklace and refused to let go. I mean, refused. The nurse had to physically help pry his jewellery from my tiny little hands and determined grip. Dramatic, absolutely. On brand, entirely. By the age of 10, I knew I wasn't like other kids, not in a weird outcast kind of way, just different. While everyone else was reading Goosebumps and Roald Dahl, I was reading about healing and spirituality. Not exactly standard school curriculum material, but to me, it felt normal, like breathing. Knowledge was my playground, and I wandered wherever curiosity pulled me. Even as a child, though, I knew to follow my gut. I understood that life worked best from the inside out, not the other way around. I felt a constant pull towards something deeper, almost like the regular world and the regular lives people lived in the 3D didn't quite belong to me. My intuition wasn't a lightning bolt discovery, it was there from birth. I always had a knowing, even about things I couldn't logically know. I could feel other people's emotions as if they were my own. I could predict things that would happen or just know how things were going to pan out, even if I shouldn't have known. I could see beyond what a lot of people nowadays call the veil. I could hear too. And when I lay down at night, wow, did it amp up. The celestial spaces between awake and asleep, the lucid dreams, the visitors and voices that used my bedroom like platform 9 3/4. For my child brain, it was sometimes scary, confronting, and weird, but also kind of brilliant. Even though I sensed early on that I wasn't mainstream, being able to feel and perceive so much made life complicated sometimes. It was also amplified by the fact that I somehow always seemed to know how people really felt about others around me and me, even when they didn't say a word. Growing up in a Catholic household meant my early years were filled with Sunday mornings at church. I barely paid attention to most of it, except for the sermons. That was the part where the priest stepped away from scripture and spoke about God in ways that felt human and relatable. It was also where I first became aware of the wider world. As we prayed for people suffering through wars or natural disasters in faraway places, I began to understand there were lives and stories far beyond my own small bubble in Canberra. My Chilean parents had grown up in much stricter Catholic homes, but somewhere along the way, their spirits cracked open. They became curious, brave, more interested in truth and integrity than dogma. Sunday church slowly transformed into meditation retreats and bookshelves filled with philosophies from every corner of the world and religion. I used to roll my eyes hard when mum and dad sat cross legged in silence for what felt like eternity, blasting meditation music through the living room. Now I kind of giggle at that memory because that boring meditation stuff is what everyone calls mindfulness these days. They were a bit ahead of their time, I guess, and apparently their culture too. Mum still practices her spirituality regularly, and Dad even started an online meditation group during the COVID con to help others, which he still runs today. Turns out I didn't just arrive preloaded with opinions, I arrived preloaded with intuition. Growing up, though, I wore a mask. I kept my abilities quiet, my sensitivity tucked away. I never fit the mold expected of me school, university, long stints in committed jobs. I just knew that wasn't for me. The education system was a struggle, but the intuitive messages never left, and neither did the undying desire to help people. Maybe I was trying to escape the cruel and callous world we live in, the world I never quite felt I belonged to, even though I always had people around me and never short of friends or family to share moments with. I somehow still felt alone. I'd get lost in the familiar feeling of being on the outer every time. I always had a fire in my chest, though, when it comes to injustice. Even as a kid, I couldn't stand by and watch someone be ignored, mistreated, or diminished. At just 6 years old, I remember telling another girl at my school that she looked beautiful and she was so pretty. That day, I did it because I could feel how invisible she felt. She wasn't relentlessly bullied or anything, but it wasn't kind how people treated her either. No one really saw her, even her so called friends, that regularly reminded her that she was pretty ugly. It bothered me deeply. I felt responsible to tip the scales and remind her that she mattered. That energy has never left me. In my teens, I stepped in when I saw a girl being pushed around at my high school canteen. Nobody else said a word, which made me even angrier. So I spoke up. I told the mean kids to back off, and I went about my day like as if nothing had happened. Years later, I bumped into that girl, who by then was a grown woman. She reminded me of how big that moment was for her, how it shifted something inside her, how it told her that she wasn't alone. Moments like that stitched together a picture of who I was becoming. Standing up for myself as a teen, even to people in positions of power or authority, was my default. I saw injustice or bad behaviour, I called it out, period. Over time, I realised not everyone could see what I saw, the invisible weight people carried, the quiet ache behind their smiles. And it felt like I had some kind of responsibility to notice, to act on it, to be a voice where others stayed silent. Not a burden, never that, but a calling, a knowing. I always knew I was intuitive, psychic even, a medium, clairvoyant, or whatever you want to call it. Those words never frightened me. They felt familiar, like remembering something I'd always known but had yet to been taught how to name. Once I realised spirituality was the missing language, which no school could have ever taught, I dove in. I devoured books. I trained with mentors, completed courses, studied systems old and new. I wanted to understand what I was experiencing, not to control it, but to honour it responsibly and to really just get it. Looking back now, I feel nothing but gratitude. Gratitude for the weird parts, the intuitive parts, the justice fueled parts, gratitude for the bigger picture I was always woven into, even when I didn't yet understand it all. Because all of it, every single strange moment, every deep feeling, every sense of seeing more, was shaping a healer, a truth teller, a wild hearted woman who refuses to abandon the light in herself or in anyone else. And then, almost accidentally, the cards arrived. Not angel cards, not beautifully hand painted ornate decks, just a battered pack of playing cards from Casino Canberra, a gift from my dad, pulled from a drawer during one of his really rare decluttering moments. Kings, queens, jacks, jokers, aces, hearts, spades, clubs, diamonds, ordinary symbols hiding extraordinary stories. The first time I realised the cards spoke, it wasn't dramatic. It was subtle, a hum, a recognition. The Queen of Hearts wasn't just a card, she was a memory in motion. The spades carried weight. The jokers laughed truths no one wanted to say out loud. Each suite revealed a language, and somehow, impossibly, I could read it. I didn't interpret the cards, I saw through them. I see, feel, hear, and perceive all at once. Colours, sensations, light codes, emotional shifts, the angels, people's spirit guides, the whole lot. Through the cards, stories unfold. Where someone has been, what they're carrying, and the highest path available to them this lifetime. And that thread, the highest path, shows up every single time. Word spread quietly, then quickly, people asking for readings. Tears appeared where no one expected them. Truth landed gently but unmistakably. Turns out I never needed permission or a permit or a halo, just a casino deck, a curious heart, and the courage to trust what I see and deliver it. Soon after, I found myself standing in a spiritualist church, nervous but open, almost like I belonged but was just shy of a proper invitation. I had already begun to understand my ability, although I did not yet fully comprehend the depth of it. At that time, I simply knew that I was intuitive, could see through the four suites, and was getting proper hits with people, their stories, their experiences, their emotional landscapes, mostly through family, friends, extensions of networks, and eventually people began seeking me out. But it was never a job or anything, it was an act of service. One cold winter evening, I stood up at the front of the church doing platform. A name was passed to me, scribbled on a small piece of paper. A member I didn't know, sitting somewhere in the audience I couldn't see. And for the first time, in front of the entire congregation, I began to read. The moment I opened myself, the message started pouring in. I began downloading everything meant for the woman standing somewhere before me. She had lost her father. I relayed whatever came through, coherent or not, impressions, images, fragments of feelings, pieces of memories. It all flowed through me, uninterrupted by logic. The grand piano, I said out loud, as though the notes themselves carried the message. Her father's presence felt loving, warm, comforting. He loved her so much. I told her that. But beneath it all, I could also feel something else, an underlying current of anxiety, a quiet heaviness sitting below the love. I sensed something was worrying her deeply, something she hadn't yet found words for, and I named that too. I described her father, his personality traits and what he looked like, and the details about how he passed. Then, very clearly, I heard a final message louder than the rest. Tell her I know about the piano. I ended the short platform reading with that line, and it made me smile because it felt oddly specific and slightly funny. Once the service ended, I stood up the back chatting with friends and family about how I thought it was going to be a lot harder and scarier, and that I was pleasantly surprised by the ease as this slim, blonde woman with wavy hair approached me. And as her eyes began to well with tears, she shyly whispered to me, "Hello, your message, it was about me. That was my dad." She confirmed all the details about him and that they were all correct. She inherited his piano and that for a long time she had been avoiding moving house, which I had also mentioned in my read, because she was fearful to move the piano in case anything was to happen to it, as it was so precious to her dad. And now, with tears rolling down her cheeks, she explained that the piano had actually been damaged in their recent house move and it was actually gone. She looked at me, half smirking through her tears, as I said to her, "Well, he knows about it now." And we both kind of giggled, and being able to reassure her that her dad was not angry and that only had love for her washed away any nervousness that had ever existed inside me about my first time reading publicly there that day. My memories often take me back to that, and it helps me remember why I read for people, not for validation, not for performance, but for connection, for healing, and for those sacred moments when someone finally feels at peace. Today, I call myself an oracle, not because it sounds impressive, but because it's accurate. I help people see their stories, where they've been, where they are, and where they're going. And remember that ease, alignment, and truth are not things to earn, but things to return to. I've learned that shining brightly isn't arrogance, it's responsibility. Turns out I never needed angel cards or fancy decks. I had just Casino Canberra pack of playing cards that were gifted from my dad and a ridiculous level of sight. And I'm allowed to shine brightly, strangely, unapologetically, as I was always designed to, because the truth is, I never needed a license or a permit for a halo. Just a casino deck, a curious heart, and a halfway decent Wi Fi signal to the beyond. And while it was never really my intention to become anyone's favourite alien this time Earthside, shit happens.